I am passionate about storytelling and the power of story in the language classroom. But today we're going to talk about another passion of mine, and that is, would you believe it, grammar. Now, bear with me. I'm going to try and ask you questions and watch your responses in the chat box. So please feel free to type away. I won't be able to pick them all up, obviously, but I'll try and keep an eye on the chat box. So, how do you feel when you hear the word grammar? Okay. Oh, gosh, I've got a lot of people who like it a lot. Oh, there's one bored, there's one worried. Challenging, terrified, boring, love it. Okay, now, okay, we've got a load of different feelings here. And just hold back a second, because I'm going to try and ask you another question. How do your students feel about grammar? Are they happy, nervous, bored, confused, afraid? Difficult, yes. Reluctant, they like. Great, you're a very interactive group out there. Thank you so much. Depressed and confused, right? Okay. Thank you for that. Horrifying. Oh my goodness. Well, I'm glad I put that last emoji in there. Okay, so it's true. Grammar can be tricky to teach and to learn, but it's an essential part of learning a language. Without it, we can't string vocabulary into sentences coherently. We need to know how to form it, what it means, when to use it in real life. And students need it in order to communicate. And of course, they need it to pass the exams. So in this webinar, we're going to talk about how to make teachers and students feel happy and excited about grammar, or at least not nervous or daunted or bored by it. So I'm going to try and involve you, as much as I can. So yes, keep the chat box coming. So we're going to look at different approaches to grammar, using scaffolding to support children's learning, and how to make grammar achievable for every child. So that's the plan for today's talk. Okay, to start, I want you to imagine that you are back at school in your English lesson. I'm going to show you two activities. Please look at the board. Today, we're going to learn how to use the present continuous tense. We use this to describe what somebody is doing now. To form it, we use the subject plus the verb to be plus the verb plus ing. I'll give you an example. Look at picture 1. He is playing tennis. Can you tell me about picture 2? I hope you can see that clearly. I think it's volleyball. They are playing volleyball. Well done, that's great. Okay, what about picture 3? I think this is, let's say this is a girl, I can't tell, but let's say it's a girl. So she, what's happening in picture 3? She's doing karate, or yes, kung fu, or okay. Brilliant, thank you. And hello everybody who's still joining. It's very early days in this talk, so welcome. And yes, I've just launched in with an activity straight away. Okay, so you can use the present continuous tense. Let me show you another activity. Look at these pictures for a moment. How many differences can you find? Let's do it together. I'll talk about picture 1 and you can tell me about picture 2. So The blue monster has 5 ears. Okay, the orange monster has 6 ears. The blue monster doesn't have spots. The orange monster has spots. Okay, somebody's saying the orange monster has a nose. The blue monster doesn't have a nose. The blue monster has a tail. And great, wow, you are finding lots. That's great. Some of you are just giving the nouns, other people are making full sentences. Okay, that's brilliant. Now, do you realize that those of you who've been making sentences, noticed a pattern? You worked out the rules for yourselves for the verb to have. We didn't talk about the rules. You saw the patterns and worked it out. Now, your English is good. I didn't need to prompt you with either of these activities. But can you see the difference in approach between this activity or this presentation and this one? Okay, some of you are ahead of me. Yeah, the difference is, yes, some great expressions here, top down, bottom up, inductive, deductive. Okay, this diagram shows the difference between the deductive and inductive methods. So the deductive approach starts with a grammar rule. It explains how to use it in general terms, and then it moves on to specific examples. The inductive approach starts with noticing the language in a context and working out patterns and rules for yourself. So which approach do you think is most suited to teaching young learners? Deductive or inductive? Okay, I'm getting, okay, I'm getting a great mix here. Most of you are saying inductive. Some of you are saying deductive. Okay, it depends. Okay, brilliant. Yes, there's a good mixture here. So the deductive approach is often teacher-led and uses meta language like present continuous, subject plus verb. And as adults, we might be able to focus more easily on these grammar rules and then apply them later. But children tend not to look for these rules when they learn a language. They look for meaning and purpose, and they approach language from the inside. So most of our course books today use the inductive approach, like Story Central Plus, which presents language in topic-based units and has stories at the heart of every chapter, along with songs and CLIL materials to contextualize language. This obviously is underpinned by a solid grammar syllabus, which is reinforced with grammar boxes, reviews, practice activities. And as writers, the grammar box is still our starting point, but it isn't so upfront and obvious to the children who are using the course. So the question isn't really, do we need to teach grammar, but how best to approach it in the young learner classroom. And there's no correct answer, there are different ways. So let's have a look at how we can teach grammar inductively. We basically need to apply the same principles to teaching grammar that you apply to anything you're teaching young learners. Because as we know best, and I've seen some of you are putting in the chat box, children learn best when they have purpose and they feel motivated and they're having fun. And sometimes some of them may be daunted by the rules or not find them so much fun. So here are some of the principles of teaching young learners that you know already and you're all using all the time. So we have to use relevant and child-friendly materials, fun activities like songs and stories and games, visual, we give visual and audio support, And we use interactive activities like pair work and group work and role plays. The materials have to be manageable and achievable, because obviously if it's too difficult, they are going to be demotivated. And we use personalization, which gives the language meaning to their own situations. So our course books are usually based on these principles. And coming more to the topic of this talk, we know that applying these principles is the first step in supporting children's learning. So we're going to look at other ways in which we can support them further on their learning journey. This child is learning a new skill. What new skills have you learned recently? I think some people over the last 2 years in lockdowns have been learning to make bread, or to knit, or to speak a new language. Have you learned anything? Learning to work online is a good one, yes. Playing the piano, to bake. Okay, so yeah, using Zoom, me too, I'm still learning that. Designing, okay. Yeah, I think a lot of us have had to learn new skills over the last few years. And at first you probably needed a lot of support, but gradually maybe you stopped referring to that recipe or having to ask for help. Oh, someone actually learned to drive a car. That's a great example. Or perhaps you've taught somebody else a new skill, like a child to ride a bike. So let's use this as an example. At first, it's difficult and scary. The child needs a hand to hold them, or perhaps stabilizers on the back of the bike. Gradually, they grow more confident and you can take off the stabilizers. They wobble, you hold them. They get more confident, you let go. But if they wobble again, you're there to catch them. It's the same with teaching grammar. You can't feed your students grammar and say, off you go and use it. We have to present it with visual support and model the language and monitor and help them along the way, prompting them, but not overcorrecting. And importantly, yes, let them make mistakes along the way. So in education, we call this kind of support scaffolding. Scaffolding is tied to the work of the psychologist Vygotsky, who talks about the zone of proximal development. This zone is the distance between what students already know and what they have yet to learn. So it's what they're capable of learning. You can see on this chart, the scaffolding chart here, the blue area is what they can do already, the yellow is what they can't do. And the zone of proximal development is this green area in the middle, so what they are capable of with support. So for scaffolding to work, teacher has to start with knowing what the students can do, then supporting them, building on what they already know so they grow in confidence and knowledge as they go along. And the teacher can step in to support when needed and then step back again when the child is more confident. So in practice, in the classroom, this is sometimes called I do, we do, you do. So the teacher first models, then the class does something together, and then they're free to do it on their own and work individually. So to support the learning of grammar, we can do these things to scaffold our teaching. And a lot of these things we do for scaffolding overlap with the principles we've just looked at. So we're going to present in child-friendly contexts like stories and CLIL, as we've said. We can also activate prior knowledge and arouse interest when we introduce a topic, finding out what they already know. We might pre-teach vocabulary to give meaning and context. And we'll use audio and visual support with pictures, audio scripts, videos. As teachers, we model, monitor, and prompt our students, helping them along the way as they work, providing prompts. We use pair work, group work, and class practice. And collaborative learning like this takes the pressure off individuals and is confidence building. Games and role play give them opportunities to practice in guided but fun context. And again, personalize. This helps them to make grammar relevant if they can relate it to themselves. Okay, so let's have a look at how scaffolding works in practice. Here are a few child-friendly contexts we use when teaching grammar. First, a story. Are you sitting comfortably? The kangaroo's pouch. One evening, Mrs. Kangaroo and her baby meet an old wombat. I'm very hungry, says the wombat. Oh, poor Mr. Wombat, says Kangaroo. Let me help you. Do wombats eat grass? Yes, we do. We don't eat meat, says Mr. Wombat. Hold my tail. Come with me, says Kangaroo. Wait a minute, Viv, I hear you cry. Slow down. Where are the pictures? What's this story about? What's a wombat? What's a pouch? There's no scaffolding here. You've just launched into the story. Okay, so stories are a wonderful child-friendly context for teaching grammar, but you probably wouldn't present it like I did. I didn't offer you any support. Ah, here it is. So here's some visual support. Of course, in the classroom, you might first show them the story to set the scene, drawing on their prior knowledge. And what can you see here? What are these animals called? Where are they? Where is Australia? You might start with the title, so the kangaroo's pouch. Can you see at the beginning, he actually doesn't have a pouch. So this is the baby kangaroo is on his back. So this is actually a Australian Dreamtime folk tale about how the kangaroo got his pouch. So you'd use prediction, what do you think the story's about, what kind of story is it, and so on. You'd probably pre-teach some vocabulary, like we do on this page from Story Central Plus. This page uses photos to show the animals and their habitats. Here we can learn the words for the body parts, fur and pouch and tail. They're presented in a matching activity to pre-teach vocabulary that you'll need when you come to using grammar. Like parrots have feathers, kangaroos have fur, they have a pouch, and so on. This all prepares them and scaffolds the way, step by step, towards the story. So back to the story again. Oops, sorry. Lost my place. So in this story, the kangaroo helps the wombat and his kindness is rewarded. The wombat is actually a spirit who gives the kangaroo a pouch to say thank you. And oh, by the way, did you pick up on the grammar in this story? Wombats eat grass. They don't eat meat. Kangaroos sleep a lot in the daytime. What do wombats drink? And so on. Yes, it's the present simple. Present simple for facts, things that are always true. So our course books and readers are full of stories that are carefully graded to practice specific grammar and vocabulary. Learners hear the structures within the context of a story, which gives them meaning. They're motivated by the story itself and wanting to know what happens next, often oblivious to the grammar structures in their desire to understand the story. Moving on to games. Simple games like the spot the difference with the monsters we did earlier, or this jumbled sentences activity here, can also make grammar fun and interactive. This activity here supports the learning of sentence and question formation. Can you put the words in order? Okay. Of course you can. But when learners put words in order like this, they're noticing patterns and they're working out the grammar for themselves in an inductive way without focusing on the rules or using meta-language. So stories and games are great, and another great activity for presenting and scaffolding grammar is songs. Here's a song from level 1 in Story Central Plus. Okay, I'm going to ask you 2 questions. So just hold back on answering for a minute because I want to show you something first. So this song I'm going to show you, I want you to tell me 2 things. Firstly, what is the grammar focus? And secondly, how does the material I'm sharing with you support or scaffold their learning? Okay, so first, what's the grammar focus? And second, how does the material support or scaffolds their learning? So here's the student book page. Have a quick look. And I'm going to show you the song video too, which I hope you can hear and see.
I have a turtle and a cat. I have a hamster and a rat. I have a fish and a mouse. They all live here in my house. I love my pets and they love me. I love my pets, they're my family. I don't have any brothers or sisters, you see. My pets are my family.
Okay. I'm going to go back to my questions. Can you tell me 2 things? Oh, sorry. Whoops, I didn't mean to show you again. Okay, grammar focused. Yep, you've all been saying have, don't have, present simple, talking about possessions. And what about my second question? So how does this kind of material support you when you're learning the grammar? I think some of you answered already. Okay, there's audio and visual support. Songs are memorable. Yep, repetition of structures, actions as well, personalized, inductive and fun. Great. Okay, so this kind of combination of material, it is teaching grammar and it is doing it in a very supportive way without having to focus on how the grammar is formed. So yes, my notes were, yeah, there are visuals on the page, there's audio, there's video, there are actions to follow, there's modeling and repetition, there's intonation and rhyme. The mime is through ASL, the American Sign Language, and endless practice, emphasizing the grammar point. It is drilling. Somebody's put drilling, and it is like drilling, disguised drilling. Great. Okay, so we've seen songs, we've seen stories, we've seen word games or jumbled sentences. Okay, speaking games and activities also get learners to use grammar in a meaningful way. Activities like this class survey, they embed grammar and involve learners in pair work or group interaction. The questionnaire itself supports them by providing a template they can refer to, like a kind of crib sheet. And the language is meaningful as they're being asked to personalize, say what pets they have in the first one, or what they can and can't do in the second one, using grammar for a real purpose. We mustn't forget the grammar boxes. Grammar boxes are another kind of scaffolding prop. Learners can refer to them to inform their activities. For reassurance and for consolidation, grammar references like this one on the right provide more reinforcement with grammar boxes to be completed by learners themselves, making it more memorable. And as some of you said at the beginning, a lot of children like to see the grammar to consolidate what they've learned and to reassure them. I think you'll agree that all these activities I've just shown you present grammar in motivating ways. They provide a lot of guidance and scaffolding along the way that should prepare learners to work independently, which is obviously our goal. So as course book writers, don't worry about reading. You don't need to read this page. Just wanted to show you that, yeah, as writers, we aim to provide ready scaffolded lessons with carefully selected tasks and presented in a logical order to guide teachers and learners systematically through the unit. So teachers' books like this spread from Story Central Plus provide a kind of map through the unit and give ideas for support along the way. We often begin with the aims of the lesson or learning objective, such as by the end of this lesson, students will be able to ask and answer questions about animals. It can be helpful for students to know the objectives at the beginning of the lesson, so they know what they're aiming for. Scaffolding can also help when dealing with mixed ability classes. Tasks can be adapted for different learners based on their ability. And we can also adjust the amount of support that we provide to individuals. So this brings me to differentiation and making grammar achievable for every child. Our learners are diverse. They come into the classroom at different experiences, different interests, different needs. Their prior knowledge and abilities and learning styles are also specific to individuals. Differentiation is about planning different tasks or different learning experiences for groups of students so that we can meet the needs of every learner. Here are some ideas for how to make learning achievable for every child. So starting top left, assessment and goal setting. As we said before, the starting point is knowing where your students are at and what they're capable of learning. You know your students and their levels and needs, and there are lots of assessment tools available to help with this too. Table groups, I'm going to talk about this more in a minute. This classroom management strategy involves allocating tables to groups of children who might have diverse needs. I'll come back to this. Differentiated activities. So here you might give a child or a group of children a different activity or shorten the activity for some, You might present it in a different way or modify the outcome. Differentiated scaffolding. This is about giving more or less teacher support, not overcorrecting or giving more or less access to support materials. Collaborative learning techniques such as think, pair, share allow for peer support. Students can formulate and share ideas together first to build confidence. So you might first ask them to think about a question on their own, then pair up to discuss their thoughts, and then finally share their ideas with the whole class. Open-ended tasks offer students some choice on how they present what they know. And of course, there are many digital resources available that can be accessed or not as learners require them. Apps and games and extra worksheets to make the lessons more flexible. I'm going to look at some of these ideas in more detail. Do you use table groups, or somebody's called them stations, learning stations in your classrooms? If so, how do you group children? There are several ways to group them. Okay, some people use them when, yes, mixed abilities. Yeah, I think you can group them by ability or by their interests or perhaps learning styles, or group them in mixed ability groups, depending on the activity. This classroom has been organised into table groups or learning stations. So you can refer to table by colour, the green table, the orange table, or perhaps by animal names or team names, you know, the lions, the sharks, the giraffes. The idea is to avoid numbering them group 1, 2, and 3, or group A, B, and C, because these suggest a kind of hierarchy or top group and bottom group, which we don't want to show. So with these tables, there are different ways, or these learning stations, there are different ways to group the students. The most obvious way is perhaps by ability, and then you can give groups different tasks, having identified their levels. If you do this, you can give tailored tasks to each table, but it can be really beneficial to put mixed ability groups together. The benefit of mixed ability grouping is that teachers can set the same high expectations. This is sometimes called teaching to the top. They can offer the same task to all the learners, as long as they have scaffolding in place to help the pupils who need it. This might be teacher support, or giving extra guidance, or engaging in further discussion. But mixed ability tables also lend themselves to peer support, so students can help each other. Put weaker students with medium ones, medium students with stronger ones. The higher achieving students can help out those who are struggling. And this means everyone in the group will be able to do the same task with teamwork and good communication, and nobody is left behind. So this slide shows some differentiated grammar exercises. Which one do you think gives the most support, and which one gives the least? Got complete, circle, and choose. Which one do you think is the easiest? It gives the most support is, yes, okay, circle, because they only have to know to have a look at 2 words and choose between the 2. Okay, which one gives the least support? Okay, yes, complete, because they have to write the whole sentence themselves. Yes, okay. And then, of course, choose is somewhere in the middle. You've got 1, 2, 3, 4 options to choose from. So you are being given support, but not as much support as circle. So you can edit your course book and make your own tailored activities like these with varying degrees of challenge and support. You can actually tailor whole lessons, changing content with different activities or different task cards. You can give them more guided activities to the table groups needing more help, or with mixed ability groups, share them out equally and let students complete them all by helping each other out. But making tailored materials like these can be a lot of work for the teacher. So it's actually great to be able to use content that naturally lends itself to differentiation without having to change it. So keeping the same content, but differentiating the process or what the students produce. When we present grammar through stories and songs, you can often use the same content, but give children different roles or different degrees of involvement, or even let them choose these roles. This is another story from Story Central Plus. Do you know this story? The Emperor's New Clothes. I'm sure you do. Okay, so with this story, we pre-teach clothes and ask them to predict and look at the pictures and all of those stages that we talked about in scaffolding before. I'm just going to read you a section from the last page. The emperor and his servants are in the street. He's wearing his crown and he's wearing his new suit. Or is he? What's the emperor wearing? Asks a young boy. He's wearing a new suit, says his mum. He isn't wearing a suit, shouts the boy. Ha ha! It's true, say the people. We're very silly. So the grammar here, embedded in this story, the vocabulary is clothes, and the grammar is, yes, what's he wearing? He's wearing, he isn't wearing. So when you present grammar within a story like this, with visual and audio support, you're allowing for differentiated experiences. Some learners might just look at the pictures as you read or as they listen. Others might look and listen and follow the text. And some might read every single word as they follow the text in their books. So yes, we've got present continuous, or specifically, what's he wearing? So that's the grammar, and there are different ways of accessing it, or different levels that students can experience the material. Somebody mentioned this was a great story to act out. And here we have these children at the top. Yes, these children at the top, they are acting out the Emperor's New Clothes story. So when they produce the language in acting or role play activities like this one, they can take different roles. There are the main characters for maybe the more confident learners, the narrator, or others might have chorus roles or even non-speaking parts. With songs like the Pets song, students can just do the actions, or they could join in when they feel confident. Maybe just sing the chorus or sing the whole thing and read every word. So these activities show learners using the same content, learning the same language, but using different processes and accessing the language at different levels, having different experiences along the way. As teachers, you probably use the same activity with the whole class most days. but you can adjust the amount of support you give rather than adjusting the content. So this support might be from you, the teacher, stepping in, or a teaching assistant, monitoring and helping some groups more than others. Or it might be something more tangible, like a worksheet, a graphic organizer, or a grammar reference that you make available for students to access if and when they need it. Grammar references, graphic organizers, and writing frames such as these can be used to help learners organize their ideas and guide their writing when they're practicing new structures or writing longer pieces. Some learners may need them, others may not. I know a lot of teachers are teaching online at the moment. And one teacher friend of mine suggested that nobody would choose this way, but online learning does make it easier to cater for mixed abilities sometimes. She said it was easier to tailor lessons for different students or different groups. You don't have the same classroom management issues. And with educational technology, there are so many materials online that can be downloaded if needed or referred to make lessons more flexible. You can provide different worksheets for different learners. You can give perhaps different tasks to different breakout groups. The Teachers Resource Centre in Story Central Plus has loads of online materials with additional resources. There's a test generator which allows you to pick and choose activity types and tailor them to your needs. And finally, it may sometimes be possible to give students the option to choose what they produce, so choose their own outcome, rather than you always deciding how to differentiate. Here are some options for freer tasks that practice grammar using the same structure we saw before for the kangaroo's pouch. So the first one, the top left, has learners making fun facts or funny sentences. Giraffes don't eat ice cream. Polar bears don't sleep in trees. Sharks have 300 teeth. The second option below is a bit more challenging. It invites them to write riddles. So I have wings, but I don't have feathers. I sleep in the day. What am I? And more ambitious or confident students might choose the final option and make a whole poster about an endangered animal. So here, polar bears are in danger of extinction. They live in the Arctic. You're all guessing that. I think it was a bat. Actually, in the book, I think it's a bat that has wings but doesn't have feathers and sleeps in the day. So giving learners freedom and autonomy to choose an activity, perhaps on a Friday afternoon or at the end of a topic, will keep them engaged rather than just telling them what to do. So we've looked at different approaches to teaching grammar, using an inductive method backed up by grammar as a way of engaging young learners. We know how to make it fun with learner-centered and motivating materials and varied activities. Add to this clear goals, careful planning, and we can find ways to teach grammar at different speeds and depths using scaffolding and differentiation to make it fun and achievable for every child. How do you feel about grammar now? Better, great. Oh, I'm so pleased because I was hoping that you would all feel like this. Brilliant. Thank you. Thank you, everybody. Keep on teaching that grammar. Keep on enjoying it. And I hope you all have a good year ahead. And if we do have to carry on teaching online, let's make the most of it. But hopefully you'll all be back in those classrooms again soon.
Viv, Thank you so much for a really interesting, informative session. Very, very enjoyable. I myself, I love grammar too, and I love teaching grammar. So we've got some questions that have come in during the session. Please don't go anywhere to our lovely teachers, participants who are out there. If you have any questions, make sure you put them in the Q&A. But in the meantime, I'm going to ask you a couple of questions that came through as you were going through. The first seems to be a question that's come through for everybody is, from which book are the examples? So this is from a book called Story Central Plus. And I'll put a link to that actually in the chat now so people can see where to go if they're interested in the materials themselves. And we had a really great question early on. Let me just find that one for you. So this was from Deyanira. Okay, so I apologize if the pronunciation isn't correct, but Deyanira's asked, Deyanira daughter Duarte asked, for storytelling, shall we read out the story to YLs without showing it to them, or read it aloud while they follow the reading, or have them read it aloud in pairs and groups and act it out? Are all of these valid options to expose them to the grammar?
I think so. What was the first one you said?
Read it out without showing it to them.
Okay. Now, I think they are all valid.
Yeah, me too.
Because in this talk, I wanted to stress the usefulness of scaffolding. So preparing students along the way and making sure they felt confident. So once they get to hearing the story, they already know what to expect. Prediction, pre-teaching, showing them the pictures, all this kind of thing. But just occasionally, I don't know, I think it can be good because of the power of stories to just tell the story. You might want maybe just one picture or some actions, because I think sometimes students are surprised how much they can understand because of the story context. So sometimes I think it's a bit experimental, but I think you can just launch straight into a story, because the whole point of stories is that they are a context, and they make sense because of the way the narrative continues.
Yeah.
I think you might do that with perhaps a stronger group.
Yeah.
I worry that you might lose a lot along the way. So I would still usually go for this kind of scaffolded support, because then they're really amazed when you tell the story or they read the story, how much of it they really do understand.
Yes, yeah.
And then about, what was the acting out? Tell me the other two.
Yeah, so I'll read it aloud while they follow. So that's kind of a bit more scaffolded, as you said. Or have them read it aloud in pairs and then act it out. Pairs or groups?
Yeah, I mean, acting out is brilliant. But again, I think there are so many different ways to do it. To act it out and it to represent the story closely, they would obviously need to have fairly good understanding of the language, to have had it modelled, to have practiced it. But, I think, again, perhaps a Friday afternoon, they can act it out in their own way, give them some freedom to use the language they want to use. And again, because they're motivated by the story, they might be surprised at how much, language they do know, and they can pull together and make their own version, if you like.
Yeah, I agree. I think they're all valid ways, and I think you could, they're all sort of stages of a lesson that you would probably do if you were to teach the story. Yeah. Just a little anecdote that you probably like. I went to watch a teacher teaching Story Central, teaching a class of, they were grade 6, so they were the highest level.
Yes.
And at the end of the lesson, he did a great lesson, by the way. I was a teacher in Bangkok. And at the end of the lesson, he asked the students what they liked about the book. And they all said the reader. They loved the reader. They loved the stories.
Yes.
And then he asked them why they liked it, and they were saying, oh, because the images were beautiful, the stories were fun. And one girl put her hand up and said, I liked it because I can see the grammar that's been taught in the student book, and I can see it in the story, and it helps me understand the grammar. I was so blown away that she actually knew that the book was actually doing that and trying to do that. Her metacognitive skills were super high,
Yes,
and was it was really great.
Yes.
So on that, and with that anecdote, I have a question here from an anonymous participant who says, do you think it's okay to teach the grammar terminology such as the subject, the verb, the object to young learners?
I think you know your learners better than I do. And a lot of people at the beginning of this webinar said they loved grammar and their students liked it too, and maybe it works for them. For me, I had a bit of a horror of this terminology when I was learning, and I think it's because in my day it was, you know, rammed down your throat. This is the subjunctive, this is the past participle, this is the so we had to learn stuff by rote and kind of drill stuff without really having it in context or without it having a particular meaning. So I'm a bit against it personally, but you know your kids, you know where they're at, you know your own classroom situation. And sometimes there's expectation, I think, from parents or older generation, like, why haven't you learned the present perfect yet?
Yeah.
You know, and the poor child, they may have learned it, but they don't know that they've learned it because they learned it in a context. And the important thing is that they can use it. And a lot of the exams today, I mean, I've done a lot of work on the Cambridge Young Learners exams. They don't expect you to know any meta language.
Yeah.
They test you on using language to describe pictures, to tell stories, to talk about what your experiences and this kind of thing. So I'm a little bit anti, but I don't like to tell people not to, because I know situations are different. And I know, like in Greece, they love grammar. So they would feel like, you know, we haven't learned anything yet if we haven't seen it written down.
Yeah. I often think about it in terms of other subjects where we do learn the meta language around it. So when we learn maths, for example, you wouldn't think of teaching someone, a child, for example, that instead of using the word cube, you would substitute for the word box, or, you know, for a sphere, you wouldn't just say it was a circle. So yeah, I think children are open to learning the meta language, but how we do that and how much of it we do is the question, I think.
Yeah, I like to find out after they've learned it and used it and understood it, to maybe say, by the way, did you realize you've now learned this? Tick it off, you know.
Yeah. And that might be a way of, like you said, sometimes you're doing it for the parents' sake rather than for the child's sake.
I think, you know, in the course books, you'll often have a little footer at the bottom of the page, you know, that might say, I mean, even there we don't tend to use it. And I know even the common, you know, the European language framework uses learning objectives. It doesn't say today we're going to learn the present continuous. It says, exactly, you know, the aim is to be able to describe what somebody is doing. So why confuse the issue? They're learning enough kind of new language anyway. Confuse it by adding a lot more, you know, language that won't help, that they won't use, you know. Yeah.
Just, have you got time for just one more question? Is that okay? Yeah. So this is from Maria Docinovic, who says, how to deal with the learners who are used to be taught grammar in their mother language without using the mother language itself. When I start explaining something using English, I can see their confusion on their faces.
Okay, well, I don't think there's anything wrong with translating from time to time. If you've got a monolingual group, and I think it's quite helpful if the children do know the grammar terminology in their own language. They've got a head start in a way. I mean, we English native speakers are really lazy about learning grammar terminology. But if they've got that knowledge already, I wouldn't avoid using it.
Right.
You know, I wouldn't say, oh, we better not talk about the past participle. But if they know what a past participle is, it might actually help them to, you know, if they know it in their own language, it might help them. So I would never be too afraid of again, using what they know, you know, starting with the starting point is what your students know, and you know what they already know. And I wouldn't be afraid of translating when it helps.
Right.
I hope that answered. I don't know if that quite answered the question.
Yeah, I think it did. Yeah. I think that's fine. And I got points as well for a great pronunciation of the name, so I feel quite happy as well.
Good.
Thank you, Maria. Thank you so much. Okay, well, I think we've exhausted the questions that have come in. Some really nice questions there, and interesting answers as well. I thought it was some nice food for thought, particularly with the teaching a meta language as well when it comes to grammar. I often find as well teachers like to use the meta language because it's something that they know because they've learned it themselves. So it's kind of like sometimes it feels good to be able to say, I know it's the subject plus the verb plus verb ing, and therefore teachers are using it because they know it rather than whether the learners actually need to know that as well.
I think we tend to have it in the scope and sequence in the front of the book or in a footer, or you know, but I just think I wouldn't use it as a starting point personally.
Yes,
because the other starting points are so much more fun.
Yes, they are. You're right. Yes, for sure.
Okay.
All right. Well, thank you so much. Please stay where you are, everybody. I've got a couple of more things to announce. We've got some exciting things that are happening this year that I want to tell you about, and I don't want you to miss out on. So we've got questions about recordings of the webinar, which I'm going to tell you right now. So Viv, could you just stop sharing your screen, please?
Okay. Thanks, everybody.
Yeah, and thank you so much for your time today. I know you've got other sessions that you're going to deliver today, so I'll let you go. And and just say, what a great session. I speak on behalf of everybody in the chat. There's lots of love coming through in the chat. So thank you so much. And
thank you.
And see
thanks
you soon.
Everyone. Thanks everyone for your comments, because it's been really an interactive session.
Thanks, Viv. Take care.
Thank you. Right, I'm trying to find stop share. Okay, bye everyone.
Bye-bye. All right, everybody, stay where you are. I'm going to share my screen now. And a lot of people were asking about the materials that Viv was showing you today. So as Viv mentioned, grammar can be tricky to teach and to learn. And that is why we have created something that will make your life easier. The new Grammar Booster in Story Central Plus has been designed with all students in mind and providing step-by-step and more challenging activities which build grammar and exam confidence. So what we've done, we've added 36 extra pages of grammar practice in the student's book. There's extra scaffolding, which we've mentioned, and reinforcement for future practice and mixed abilities. So that was discussed, wasn't it, about differentiation and teaching students that are of a different level. And there are more challenging activities for those stronger students, which allow all learners to reach their potential. There's something for everyone in the class. The Cambridge exam practice, which we've just mentioned, now has more test questions covering all 4 skills for the Cambridge English qualifications, if that's something that's important to you and your learners. And it will give students extra practice and improve their chances of succeeding at the exam. There are digital versions of the student book, the activity book, and the reader. And this updated and easy to use digital learning package is designed for in-class and remote teaching. So whatever your scenario, we have you covered. It extends students' contact with English after the lesson, makes learning fun, and motivates students with interactive exercises. So you can discover all of these plus features at macmillanenglish.com/Story Central Plus.